Well, let's see how it goes. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. And first than anything, I want to thank Danny Newman for getting all of us together, for making this huge effort of planning this foray to honor Dr. Korf. When Danny came to the herbarium a few years ago, he immediately was drawn into this magnificent personality because being at Cornell Plant Pathology Herbarium is absorbing some of what Professor Korf, Dr. Korf was. So I have prepared, so I thank you, Danny, for having placed me in this very difficult task. I think there would have been many, many people that could have also been here in my place. And I'm proud and honored to be here. So the talk has been titled Remembering Dr. Korf, Richard P. Korf. Richard P. Korf, for many, was Dr. Korf, as it was for me when I first started at Cornell. I called him Dr. Korf all my life until I graduated with my PhD, and then he told me, now you call me Dick. And I said, how am I going to call Dr. Korf Dick from one day to the next? And it was very difficult for me for that transition. Many people called him Professor Korf, and other people called him Korf.
You mind standing in front of you?
I'm standing in front of my camera.
I'm right in front, if you can, a little bit, so you can get recorded here. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm very bad at this. So I have divided the talk more or less in three big areas. A timeline of his life, and his accomplishments, and then a more like personal, and not only of myself, but of other people, about remembering him, remembrances, and how did he influence so many people as he did. So the first part is the timeline is an overview, as it says, of personal events and professional accomplishments throughout his life. So thanks to his daughter, Nuni Korf, who I have to say that she's my friend, and we made a friendship through Professor Korf. She gave me a lot of personal photographs, which are for the first time being exposed here. So we're going to talk a bit about his childhood, his education at Cornell, his teaching, the field work, mycotaxon, and some of his honors and awards that he received. So in his early years, Korf was born in May 28th of 1925. He was born from a well-off family and that had two houses, one in Worcester County, New York, and another one in Connecticut. This is him with all dressed in horse riding outfits. And you can see that they were kind of a very elegant family. And he conserved that elegance, even though being in slacks most of his life, his inner elegance was always there. So he he spent his childhood there. In 1941, went to Riverdale Country School, which is a very special school. And he was so good that once the professor had to leave, and he was placed in charge of the biology course. So one can see that this young boy already was showing promise. At 17 years old only, in 1942, he attended Cornell as an undergraduate. And he thought when he got into Cornell, he was thinking he would like to become a gentleman farmer. That's how he foresaw him as a farmer and having lots of chicken because he thought that that would feed the world. So he saw himself as a elegant farmer with a hat and elegant suit, etc. Years went by, and in 1943, he enrolled, being at Cornell, at Professor Wetzel's, the father of phytopathology in the United States, of plant pathology in the United States. He enrolled in his course, and it was Introductory Plant Pathology. That was his first contact with fungi. Then in 1946, 3 years later, he still had this thing going in his head. He earned his Bachelor of Science, and in that same year, he decided he was going to go on for graduate work. So he enrolled at the Department of Plant Pathology, which was the only place where he decided at that point he was not going to go into poultry science. He had decided fungi and plant pathogens were more interesting. So he studied under Professor Fitzpatrick, and his stories with Professor Fitzpatrick are wonderful. At that time, in the 1950s, he was very, very good student, and he was studying together with another mycologist from the New York Botanical Garden, Professor Rogerson, Clark Rogerson. And Clark Rogerson and him were dropped by Fitzpatrick on one of the many wonderful places to collect around Cornell, which are, for example, the Ringwood Preserve and other different natural areas around Cornell where we still collect, and where his ashes are today in Ringwood. And Professor Fitzpatrick would drop them for half a day or for the whole day, sometimes forgot to pick them up. And and they stay there forever, collecting and collecting, and they got to know very well the mycological biota of that area. In the 1950s and 51, he taught 1 year. He was graduated then, so he went 1 year to Glasgow. Already Cornell wanted to hire him, but they told him, you need to go and have a year out of Cornell as an experience. So he decided to go to Glasgow, a university in Scotland. And there he met Pontecorvo. And Pontecorvo was an Italian mycologist, a geneticist mainly, that was working at that same place in Glasgow on his experiments with Neurospora and Aspergillus nitulans, and trying to prove parasexuality. So they discovered parasexuality, which is a very unique mechanism in which fungi, without mating, can have genetic recombination. So Korf understood first than anybody what parasexuality meant. And I still remember on my days as a student that people tried, the plant pathologists that were professors, tried to explain what parasexuality meant. And they explained it in class, and nobody understood what it was. So they came to Professor Korf's office to get his explanation from firsthand of what was parasexuality. Korf explained to them, and then the following class, I won't mention the names of the professor, they would come in front of 300 students and say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what parasexuality meant, but because I asked my colleague who was there when parasexuality was discovered, I asked him and he was able to explain me well. So he had all these wonderful stories with Pontecorvo. He returned to Cornell from 51 to 61 and was an assistant professor of mycology. And being assistant professor, he invented the Cornell hood at Ringwood. I want you to know, what do you do when you're lost in the forest and you want to call your colleagues? What's your first? Anybody want to share? What's your first reaction? Do you sing? Do you, you whistle?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good whistle. Looks like a toucan whistle, which is projecting. Well, anybody else wants to guess? Well, Professor Korf had studied theater, and he was an actor in his core, and he had taken classes on how to project his voice. So he, because of having experiences of students getting lost in the wood, he taught them and invented the Cornell hood. And the Cornell hood is something like, woot! Let's do it all together. We've done that many times with Kathy Hodge, who has been the follower and who took place of Professor Korf at Cornell University, and that is with us here. And she's an expert on the Cornell hood. So if you want to read more about it, you can read her blog about it. So we still do the Cornell hood. When I went back to Venezuela, I taught my students the Cornell hood. So the Cornell hood has been spreading all over the world. So in 1957, he took a sabbatical leave and went, for who knows what reason, he went because he wanted to work with Imai. He was already working in the Ascomycete, and Professor Imai was a Ascomycete specialist whom he admired very much. So he went to Yokohama State University, and in the meantime, he was asked to teach English classes, English lessons to groups of students, of Japanese students that did not know English at all. So one of his students was a Japanese girl, a Japanese woman, who eventually told him that he wanted his sister also to come and take English courses. And that's when Kumiko Korf, decided to attend this class of this weird, bearded person that he wasn't sure where was he from. His sister had told him he was tall, he had a beard, and Kumi already had some kind of interest and spark towards meeting this professor. That morning, before going to class, Kumi was asked by his mother to go and pick up some oranges at a friend's house that had oranges, and had some oranges for them. And Kumi remembers, and this is like a beautiful poetic way where he explains that he took some oranges to offer this professor. And when she came out of the train, just going to enter the classroom, she saw the beautiful colored oranges, and there was the sky, the sea with a wonderful blue color, and the sun with the same color of her oranges. And she said, this is a good omen. That's when she entered the classroom. And I think immediately the spark happened. So that's when that's when he met Kumiko, who everybody calls Kumi. Kumi Korf has been, I'll tell more about her, but she is a very well-known artist, renowned worldwide, very well-known in the United States. And if you want to know more about Kumi Korf, you have to talk to Noni Korf, Professor Korf's daughter, that's here with us, who should probably be giving this talk and probably already discovered several mistakes that I said about the story.
I'm learning things.
Oh, thank you, Noni. So he returned to Cornell, and from 10 years, 58 to 68, he was the counselor of the Mycological Society of America. In 61, he became professor. From assistant professor, he got tenure, he was professor, and then he continued there. And at that time, he kept his involvement with the Mycological Society of America, and became president in 1970, 1971. So he was a secretary. He went through all the chain of posts that everybody goes in the society until he became the president in 1970 to 71. From 73 to 77, he was the chair of the International Mycological Congress. Sorry, he was the chair of the Mycological Standing Nomenclatural Committee. Being part of the nomenclatural committee was something that I absorbed since the first times I arrived to Cornell. I said, what's this? What is he doing? What is this problem with the names? And then he would explain to us all the issues with naming fungi, all the rules, that there was a code called the Code of Nomenclature, that was like the Code of Laws. And he was an expert, and he was brilliant. And he would understand better than anybody all the rules in the code. And he was in charge of this nomenclatural committee for many, many years. In 73, not only did he do that, he taught, he was an avid collector, went to forays all the time, took his students. He attended his family. His family, I think, never knew how much he was, and he represented, and he was doing for all of us, apart from Nuni, because Nuni, being the eldest, was involved and went to forays with him, etc. But I guess he kept very separate his family life from, in many ways, from his professor mycological activities. In 73, together with Gregoire Hedebert, they decided to found a journal that would be different than the rest. People were very annoyed at that point because the journals, Mycologia, existing then, and many journals, would take very, very long time to, by the time you sent the paper, all the revision of the paper took ages, sometimes 1 year and 2 years. And he decided to make a different journal. And that was, I'll talk a little more about mycotaxon later. So in 74, finally, the first issue of mycotaxon came out. And until 1991, he was a managing and English language editor of mycotaxon. Nuni will correct me if in 91 was when Lorelei Norvale started, or Pavel Lison started as an editor.
That was, I think, Jean Cargill.
Oh, Jean Cargill for a couple of years. And then,
I don't remember the order of all of that, but I'm sure we could find that out. Right.
okay, yeah. Then there was a series of editors for mycotaxon. So this picture, which I don't know what happened there, something weird happened. Please do not look at the bottom. Something unusual happened. Nuni facilitated me this beautiful photograph showing Dick with all his family. His family, he had 4 children. He had Nuni was the first one to be born. Who is Nuni? You recognize yourself. You are here, Nuni, with her partner Ray. This is Professor Korf and Kumi, and then Mia, the second daughter. And Korf always said this story. He wanted to have another girl, one more, only girls. And there came a pair of twins, boys. So Ian and Mario, I think this is Mario and Ian, maybe, and Mario are there. And this is Maya, the eldest of the grandchildren, daughter of Nuni. And this is Matea, the daughter of Maya. So you have this is Korf's house as it is today. These paintings were made by Kumi. And this house, for, I can imagine his children that almost grew up, not all their lives there, but even for me has a very special connotation. Korf and Kumi and the Korf family being such a generous family, they opened their arms to all their students. And I became part of that family. Me and my family became part of their family. We would uh, have dinner with them frequently and have wonderful experiences along with all the family. We were immediately embraced. So from 1992 to 2002, continued teaching at Cornell. And in between, in 1996, he published a very important book about the fungi of China. He had a student, Wenying Zhuang, that did the equivalent of several PhD theses while she was with her, all in this Ascomycete, a very, very hardworking person. And Wenying invited him several times to go to China. So she insisted when she went back to China that they would like very much to have part of the fungi collection from China that were at Cornell. And I'll tell you how they ended up there. And Kathy Hodge and Professor Korf, they did a whole, they can tell you much more about it, but it was an intense collaboration with China until the collections were divided. The Unicate stayed at Cornell, but most of the other collections did an intense and many-year process where Scott LaGreca took also place. Scott is, am I right? You were there.
I was there just after, actually. I think it was Bob and Sue Bruff, right? Yeah, Sue Bruff.
Okay. Well, the division was made. How did those fungi of China got there? When the war between Japan and China happened, Tang had been a student at Cornell in the Department of Plant Pathology. And he went back to China without having finished his degree because they asked him. And you know, in China, in Beijing, they have the wonderful Academia Sinica, which holds more than 40 mycologists in one, taxonomic mycologists in one roof. So Tang went back there. And when the war was happening, he decided to send the collections and save the collections and take them back to the United States. So he sent part of his collections to Cornell, almost all of them, by mule, by ship, in all sorts of ways that they arrived to Cornell and arrived part of them to BPI. So because of that, the collections were okay. The rest of the collections there in China suffered enormously, and he was tortured and he died because of that heroic act. He died in jail, Tang. So Korf, years after, he was approached by Tang's daughter, who said, could Michael Taxon publish The Fungi of China? And Korf dedicated a year or 2 years or more to make this book happen and published it via Michael Taxon. That was the kind of man he was. So, well, he continued, of course, taking care of Michael Taxon. And in 2010, he was awarded the Ainsworth Medal, which is the International Mycological Association's highest award for extraordinary service to international mycology. So during his life, he made many expeditions. He knew that he had to teach fungi to his students, not only in class, not only going around Ithaca collecting, but taking them to the field. He managed to get funded with several huge NSF grants, and he got funded a big collecting trip to Japan. He went to Japan in many instances from 1957 2002. Obviously, his wife, being Japanese, was part of the reason why he would go, but he was friends with and collaborated with all the Japanese mycologists, and collected almost 4,000 specimens, which are kept at Cornell under this special CUP, is a Cornell University Plant Pathology Herbarium, -JA for Japan. We still keep collections that are important geographically, are not placed in the general herbarium, they're placed geographically. He also had another huge project, and these are some of the new species that he described. This never happened yet. It's a project that Kathy Hodge and me have. And this Daisuke Shimizu, a whole character, Danny Newman loves about the story about Daisuke Shimizu, because he was an artist that loved fungi, and he drew with special brushes he made from rats. How do you say that? Whiskers. And he drew the most wonderful things. He drew all the cordyceps from Japan, and the books are just a poem. So Korf decided to teach Shimizu to collect these Ascomycetes, and gave him as a project, paid by his grant, the project to draw these Ascomycetes. So the drawings are at Cornell. They're absolutely wonderful, and Kathy has always wanted to have a publication, which we will be working for in the near future, because these fungi have not been named yet. So the drawings are there, and the notes are there, and the specimens are there, but nothing. He wanted to do this project, but Korf had so many projects and was so prolific in his life, he didn't get to finish that one. Then the Southeastern Asian fungi, collecting fungi from all these countries from 61 to 67, 3,500 specimens. There are some of the new species he published from the Southeast Asian fungi. He also traveled to Puerto Rico and Dominica, and it was funded by NSF. He had this project of this committed exploration of the neotropics. He was funded twice, and always taking his students with him, always, and teaching. The collecting was as follows, because I took part, not of this collecting, but I took part and of the, I'm sorry, I'm not yet there. I'll tell you where I took part, because I love to say this, to tell this story. But then he went to Macaronesia, to the archipelagos of Macaronesia, which are the Canary Islands, Azores, Madeira, Cape Verde, all that group, all that area that's really part of Africa, but it's possessed by Spain. He made 3 trips, first in that range, and then he made 7 trips from 83 to 93. He collected around 3,000 specimens in all of them, and Korf has offered the herbarium her wonderful photos of the what was it, that number of trip, Noni? Number 3rd, I think.
I don't remember which one. Yeah, it must have been the 3rd. It was in 1977, 78.
And Nuni took this as a personal project and went to Macaronesia together with Korf. And I don't know how many fungi she collected, but she has a wonderful recollection of photographs that she donated to CUP. Then he went to Bermuda, again with his interest in the neotropics, and collected 125 specimens. Some of new species are there. I don't have everything, of course. It was almost impossible. Then he traveled to New Zealand and collected with Gary Samuels. Gary Samuels was stationed in New Zealand, And they connected together. And when I was at Cornell, I was starting with him that year for a master's thesis, which was how I started with him. And later I went on for a PhD. And he went to New Zealand while I was there. When I came back, he said, those are the most bizarre fungi I've ever seen. I knew nothing. I collected and I knew nothing about what I was collecting. Of course he knew, and he eventually published a lot of things of what he collected there, which were 300 specimens. And I have some of the names there. He worked them little by little throughout the years. Here he's collecting with Faircheck in Hungary. And these photos are all things that are not that easily find. This one was sent to me by Pavel Lizon, who also was a very close collaborator with the Korf later on. And that's me, long time ago. And Karen Hansen, who visited Ithaca. She was a student of yes. You're right. And she came to Ithaca to collect fungi with Korf. She didn't want to miss that opportunity. So another of these things I was able to pull together was another of the collecting trips. And this is also historic because there's Pavel Lizon with him, Korf, wearing his infamous hat, which has been the object of a poem that Dooney's friend has made, and whom he has been involved also, dedicating a poem and a piece of art to Korf's hat. Korf's hat, he always had the hat hanging on the back of his office, together with this same jacket, with all the hanging things you see. A piece, a same pair of jeans, and a wonderful belt with a huge peace sign. Sometimes he even wore a peace sign hanging from his neck in a leather string. And he would say, one moment, he would close the door. We were out there in the lab. He would change, and out we went collecting. Everything, he was always ready for collecting. So this is Meredith Blackwell and Don Feaster. And John Haynes, all these Ascomycete people. And does anybody recognize any of the others? Timberoni, where? Oh, yes, of course. Great, Timberoni. I don't know who this person is, but if we can talk about it later and then we can get more names about what's in this picture. This was on one of the MSA trips, one of the collecting trips before one of the Mycological Society of America congresses. Well, among his accomplishments, he published hundreds, almost more than 400 species, publications. I'm going to talk a little about each of these. He was always very, very aware and generous with his grad students. He got awards. I'm going to talk a little bit about his family and the legacy that he left. So I put together from one of the articles that Scott LaGreca, a wonderful article that he authored in honor of Dick when Dick died. There were several very important articles, his one being one of the best. And I'll show you, this is just a list of, and the ID they have. Of course, collections in alphabetical order. Of course, new species. So Kathy Hodge, I took this from a quote of hers. He was a world leader in the understanding and taxonomy of these Ascomycetes. There are now 3 genera and at least 16 species of fungi named after him. including the locally common false morel Gyromitra corfii. And of course, as years go by, there are more and more species dedicated to him. Sorry, a second. The list continues. You don't want to know. You don't want to read everything, and continues. Among his 400 publications or more, many of them in mycotaxon, I just chose two of the ones that three of the ones we all know about. Korf 1973 chapter in the Fungi, an advanced treatise, volume 7A. Everybody knows volume 7A. When I started working with the Ascomycetes, this was the only key available and the best one, and still actual. And of course, things have changed because of molecular techniques, etc., have changed, but this key still continues to be unique. And he treated the Ascomycetes and tuberales all in one group, and but he had it in as a different order. So his keys for the Ascomycetes and tuberales, his schematic representations of apothecia, everybody has seen those. The section of the apothecia with all the names on the left and on the right. Most of my students have always had a copy of that in front of them when they're making descriptions. And the tissue types, we all took from him. He had taken it and modernized it from another author, but he was the one that placed all these tissues together that have served so much in taxonomy, and the ascos morphologies. This is really wonderful diagrams in that book that are eternal. And in 72, he published a synoptic key to the general of Apicialis. And that was a huge article in mycotaxon. And it's also one of his main, at least Don Fisher told me that. It's one of his main articles. And it's true. Of course it was. But there were many, many, many treatments, monographs, species described, genera described, families described, nomenclatural papers, etc., etc., etc. How such a prolific man inventing the mycotaxon journal. So among all the other things he did, and he worked for mycotaxon like a madman. At that time, remember, there were no computer work. Everything was printed as the author sent it. And that was the intention of mycotaxon. The author of the publication would find their own referees and would indicate who were their referees. And Korf, of course, they would have to be well recognized. And mycotaxon, if you go through it, you'll see there are all sorts of different typefaces. Because what he did was he respected the layout. There was a format, and he respected the author had to accommodate everything into two different sizes, or a big size that got reduced by, I was a very complicated thing to figure out. I remember we had to draw with a drawing tube. We had several telephone guidebooks under the drawing place, so that our magnification of the drawings would come up to 1,125. And that would get reduced, and then the magnification would be 100, exactly. So it was, he was so creative, and well, that's one of the things I can say. So this wonderful back taxonomy can kill that some of you may have never seen was done one day with Nooney and Dick. We're together discussing they wanted to have this, Noni, that is so inventive, I think had come with the idea that taxonomy can kill. And she can explain to you much better than me about this because she was there in the story. So they eventually decided to place an amanita in a dish. I was there watching the discussion. For me, that has been the biggest honor of my life. So Danny Newman, of course, immediately grabs this, and there are these great t-shirts that you should all get. In the nomenclatural and taxonomy, he was very important. Also, he understood, as I told you before, he would discuss all and vote for all the proposals that were coming. He had a very relevant place there in the NCF, and the first International Mycological Congress in Exeter named him the secretary of the International of the Nomenclatural Committee for Fungi, which is a big honor. After Dick decided to lead the Nomenclatural Committee for Fungi, I had a big honor of being given that post to me. And of course, going into those shoes was very, very difficult. Dick would post in his classes the issues and the problems about approving a name or not, about approving a proposal or not. And we in class, with the code in front of us, would have to discuss all these issues and come to a conclusion. And they were, my God, so difficult. So when I was given that role, which I still hold, of course, I've never been like Dick. That's impossible to emulate, but it was very, very difficult for me. Korf also was issued, he decided to issue a Discomycete exicari. Exicaris, as you know, are fixed sets of a number of fungi that are described and named by an expert. And being an expert on the Discomycetes, on the field trips, we were always looking for Discomycetes in a big amount so that he could issue them in his exicari. He would issue these exicaris in fascicles of 50 specimens each, and he issued I think 10 sets of Discomycete exicari. But I at this moment I'm blanked. But there were many, many issues. We have them. They're a treasure. They were distributed to 12 institutions, and he worked on that intensely as well. So his personal herbarium, hosted at CUP, is called CUP-K, and has 5,000 specimens. 257 are type specimens. We get lots of requests for Korf type specimens. Luckily, these are collections that are not as Durand collections, for example, which we also hold in the herbarium, and sometimes the collections are ample enough that we can lend them for sequencing. You know that this is the eternal issue of herbaria. Do we lend one little apothecium or two for somebody that's going to do today one gene, some years later, 5 genes, then 7 genes, then genomes, and what's going to happen in 1 year, in 2, in 5, in 20? And we have destroyed the type specimen. So that's a big issue to consider when you are in a herbarium. And permanently, Kathy, who is the director of the Cornell Plant Pathology Herbarium and the curator, we have these conversations and discussions about, can we lend this or should we not? And Korf La Greca, being the curator before me, went through the same issues. Korf had also his theater personality, theatrical personality, was with him always. And in the plant pathology department, every Christmas, there was a dinner, and he would read to all the little children, families of the professors there, A Christmas Carol by Ebenezer Scrooge. And he would, Noni, you must remember, of course, so many times you must have been there. I was there 3 times, I guess. And each year it was different. And the audience was absolutely fascinated, not only the children, but because he would read with this voice and he would perform like the different characters, and one would be totally immersed in the story. As a student, I have to say, I went with my family. Korf invited us, and I'm sorry, it's related to the theater part. He told me once, I'm performing Men and Superman. Do you guys want to come? He invited us, the students. And I didn't know that he acted. So I went, and when I saw my professor, Dr. Korf, there performing Men and Superman, I didn't know what to do. I thought, is this true? Can this happen? But he had been doing that since he was a student, and he hid away from his professor, Fitzpatrick, who wasn't approving of him doing this. So these are different photographs then of Dick Korf, and these are, I have reunited together photographs that many people sent to me with Pavel Lizon and Amy Rosman. I don't know who this person is.
I wonder if that's Louise Zhang.
Oh, Thank's daughter? Oh, wow. You see?
Is somebody else confirming that? That's my guess.
I guess you're the only one that would know about it. And Dick, and then again, his famous hat with Pavel Lizon collecting probably in Ringwood. In 1996, I visited them. Kumi asked me to please go and visit Dick. And I spent a couple of days with them. And of course, Nooni, Kathy Hodge, and Kumi, and Dick, and me, we are all there in their house, just having fun and eating dinner together. It's difficult to talk about Dick without feeling emotional, but I decided I'm not going to cry. So this is a list of his 21 PhD students. Some were masters, usually they went for PhD. And many of them went to serve important positions later in their countries, in the MSA. He accepted students sometimes without knowing them. When I went to Cornell, for example, to my meeting with the plant pathology department people, he was at his side. He told me, oh, no, I didn't know who I was going to work with. And I went there and I only knew about big fungi. So I said, I want to work with the polypores. And they said, where had you worked? I had done some work in the Amazon area, and I knew I wanted to be a taxonomist. So they said, oh, you have to work with Professor Korf, but he's at this island. And when is he coming back? Oh, no, he's not coming back for a while. He's at his island in Canada. So I never met him. I just met him when I had already been accepted and entered into the university. And at that point, I just became, as I told you, I fell in love with the Ascomycetes. So this is a list of his master's students, his PhD students, and postdocs. I'm twice there because I also did a postdoc with him. Once you're there, you never want to leave him. And he was so wonderful to work here. So I went into, for this talk, I didn't really know what else to add. And I thought I should gather some perceptions of his students about what Korf meant to them. I wrote to many, many, many of his students. I didn't receive, for months I was doing this. I received a few of them. For example, this is Donald Pfister. And I am not going to read everything, but he says he was always impressed on the magnificence of the courses. And when Dick was going to give his classes, he entered the room with some old note cards, and that Don Pfister calls weather note cards. And I always also being there in the lab before he was going to teach, I was impressed. Oh, he's only going to take those three little cards to teach 2-hour lectures. The lectures were always magnificent. He would, of course, have some points there, but he didn't just followed that just as an example, but he would give the best mycological lectures. He would enamor you into the fungi. He explained the spores. He drew beautifully, and everybody was in awe. Everybody that took Korf's Introductory mycology, advanced mycology, field mycology course, and at the advanced mycology, the seminars, just really fell in love with the fungi. So this is a little bit more about, Dick was a formidable presence. He could be short with students. If he thought you should know some particular fungus or some fact, he would make sure that you corrected the deficiency, and often very plainly. In my days at Cornell, he was consumed by liberal politics. That was part of his interest too. His political views often put him in opposition to members of the department. The Department of Plant Pathology, they were all very conservative. They all dressed in long pants and formal long sleeves and jackets and ties. And Korf was always a rebel. He dressed as he wished, with his peace belt, and in the summer he would wear these very shorts, and he had long legs and a t-shirt that was all wrinkled, and that's how he went to the department, and all the professors were horrified, but had to admire him so much because of all his accomplishments, that he could do whatever he wanted, really. So for me, graduate students with Dick set my path that has taken several directions. This Ascomycete has been an enduring focus, but so too has been the probing of the literature of mycology and the personalities that have played a role in the development of the field. I owe that to those years with Dick. So everybody probably knows who Don Pfister is. Don Pfister is himself a very important and relevant mycologist at Harvard University at the Farlow Herbarium, who apparently is always going to retire but never does. And and I think at some point he will. Another wonderful friend of Dick and colleague and collaborator was Pavel Lison, as I mentioned him before. So these are Pavel and Dick. And Pavel, just very briefly, I think he had so much to tell that he couldn't say more than this. He said, he has been very important in my profession as mentor and colleague and as friend in life. That's very short statement to say what Korf and Pavel were. They were really, really close to each other. They had the same interests in life, and Pavel was a wonderful personality and wonderful researcher, and they worked a lot of things together. This is in front of, these were sent to me by Pavel, these photographs, and this is Kumi and Dick and Pavel, always with the dog. I don't know the name of the dog, I forgot, but
Tracy.
Casey?
Tracy.
Oh, Tracy, of course. Dick always had a dog who took to the lab. he adored dogs. And so this is Amy Rossman. Amy Rossman said, I truly appreciate that first collecting trip with Dick Korf, who showed me the wonders of tropical microfungi and inspired me to work on these small but beautiful organisms. Later, as his postdoc, I collected with him in the Azores and Bermuda, as shown in the two photographs, but the photograph got lost. I'm sorry. I don't know where they went, but this is Amy, and supposedly there was another photograph, which I don't know what happened to it. These things of the web, it didn't want to be shown, I guess. Harold Bursell was Korf's first student, and he told me, he answered to my quest, and he said, he was definitely a special person. No one had a greater impact on my career. I did an interview with Leon Sherrill in his Mushrooms, a Journal of the Wild Mushrooming, in 2004, and he spoke of the influence that Professor Korf had on him. I was not able to get a hold of this publication. Whatever good I was or did in mycology or as a mycologist is because of Prof. I could never bring myself to call him Dick, just as I could not call him my father. I could not call my father by his first name, so I settled on Prof. And that's Harold Bursell, who became and still is active in mycology. I think Harold Bursell must have been more or less the same age as Dick when he started being his student. Bob Dyrick was another close person to Dick. And he says Bob Dyrick helped him and drew lots of his images for the Macaronician publications. So having his support and friendship throughout the years was one of the great gifts of my career. It says, Dick's kindness, generosity, sophistication, charisma, commitment to peace, internationally, whatever reality, of influence and superlative science endeared him to many. While recently leafing through the fungal drawings I rendered almost 40 years ago, I wondered how I found the discipline to sit there day by day doing such intricate representations where a single line of ink often had to tell the whole story. And that's a photo he took on a party, and Susan Ruffs, who was curator of the CUP Herbarium for 25 years or so. Then it's me. I had to say something, of course. And that's, in some Congress, there were other people there, but I decided to cut them off. Just to have a photo just with him. Korf was my mycological father. It's true. Korf was my mycological father. I called him Dr. Korf during the course of my studies, even though me and my family had made a deep acquaintance with him and his family. He opened my eyes to the study of the Ascomycetes, and I fell in love with them. Together, we published and collected in Europe, the Neotropics, and North America. I learned the importance of studying fungi in the field, to culture them, establishing anamorphic connections, and understanding their life cycles. Korf was a firm determiner, a firm believer that you had to go to the field in order to understand a fungus. He was very annoyed by the fact that people were doing all sorts of things with organisms they had never seen in the field. He said, field always. Other things can come as well, but the field has to be the main thing. So the importance of naming fungi, Naming Nature is one of the books that he recommended to everybody to read that book, Naming Nature. So naming, taxonomy, and nomenclature. He became my guide and mentor throughout my studies, career, and life. Most of the decisions, mycologically speaking, when I returned to Venezuela, my native country, I started a botanic garden and then moved to a university, I would always call Dick and ask him, do you think I should go to the university or should I stay in the botanic garden? And he said, move to the university. You're going to have much more opportunities there. You can teach and have students. Everything that Dick, and many, many more things in my life where I really, he was really like a person that advised me in very important matters. So this was a repatriation of a Chinese collection that I talked to you already about. And this is a book of China. This was Tang. And this was a magic event when Kathy Hodge, Professor Korf, and Bob Dyrick handed the duplicates of the collections to important Chinese personalities that came to receive the collection. I could not talk about Dick without talking about X-Island Biological Station. In 1970 something, Dick bought a little island in a lake in Canada. And I think he bought this island just because he just felt he had to buy it. He bought the whole little island with a cottage. It had been a hotel in the mainland and some cottages from the start of the 1900s all around it. He left it intact. Well, intact is not the correct word, but he never made any modification to the landscape and nor mainly to the building. The building had, the log cabin had written scripts from people that had been there living in that cabin since when it was a hotel, and you could find those scripts. And of course, every time we went, everybody wrote something on the wall, and then you would look for when was the last time you were there. So there were some modifications, though. For example, a sofa was upholstered, and Noni did it, and she decided to make a dress with the same upholstery. So this was also a very wonderful family where everybody had this connection with jokes and humor and doings. Everybody had to work half an hour. When you got invited to X-Island, you had to work half an hour every day, half an hour. There was a huge list. You could choose whatever core. There were like 50 chores or cores, whatever. They're written down, and it said, paint 3 steps. And there was a paint, there was a brush, everything was there. Cook eggs. Rack leaves for half an hour. Pull twigs together for the fire. If you were stronger, you would even were permitted, but he had to give his approval to cut some logs in a special place he had, because he was very, very precise on everything. So X-Island was an incredible place. Dick did every morning a 7-island row. He had a canoe.
17.
17? Oh my God, I thought it was 7. Noni. So he would row, I don't know how long it took him, but for hours. And he liked sunbathing a lot. So he would go around all the other islands where some people were very surprised on seeing this person in a canoe rowing and just sunbathing in his canoe, and I won't get into more explanation. So that's again the wonderful. And Noni sent this photograph to me, most of them, and some were sent by Pavel. He was open; anybody could go to the island. If you told him you had friends that wanted to go to X-Island, he said, "Why don't you invite them? Why don't?" And if there was no room, there would be tents, and he would prepare breakfast. For him were a religion. He would prepare the dollar pancakes. So when you woke up, he had already prepared towers and towers of dollar-sized pancakes each identical to the other one. He was a wonderful cook, prepared his bouillabaisse was something amazing. So, well, these are some more photographs shared. Next island, this is Linda Cohn and Pavel and Jim Anderson. Linda Cohn's who bought also a cottage next in one of those places around there. And this is me when I was on one of those visits. And now I want to talk about Kumi. This is, Nuni sent this to me. This is Dick and Kumi when they got married. Later on in their house. And I had trouble believing that this was Kumi, but I guess it's her. And Pavel sent them to me. So I did this little recollection just for the sake of the memories. But they got married so young. They had a house at the lake in Ithaca, in the edge of Cayuga Lake. And this is, Nuni was the one telling me these stories because this follows. She said this was a year when Dick had an accident and was very clutches for a long time. And this is Dick at the same house, I think, with the twins, Ian and Mario. And this is with Nuni, when Nuni was born. Later on, they did family trips, and his piece necklace is there. And this is with Nuni again. Dick loved red sports cars. He had that car, then many others that Nuni would know if you're interested in more details. And the last of his cars was a Miata. And he would get two people would only fit in the Miata, and usually it was him and Pavel. I asked many times to go in the Miata, and one time they let me go join them on the back. And we were going to the island with no, of course, all the wind coming in and no cover. He loved sports car. As a grandfather, he made a very, very special bond with Nuni's daughter, with Maya. Maya is a singer and composer who lived in Barcelona many, many years and is maybe, hopefully now back in Ithaca. And they had a very special bond. One cannot talk about Dick without talking about his love for dogs, as I told you. This is Mina. Is this Mina? This is Mina, the last of his dogs. And Mina was his companion even in his last days. They two really had this connection. Horses, another dog, which I don't know his name. And this is something in the island you had to, there was this bathtub, which I was horrified when I got that first time to the island and see a bathtub there with some fire underneath. I thought I must have gotten to Africa. They're going to boil me here. But it's a Japanese, and that was because I was not cultured enough to know that's a Japanese tradition. And you get inside this, and I tell you, there's fire underneath, and you really boil up. You feel like but it's very good for your health. So Nuni loves it, and we all enjoyed all these wonderful things we had never seen or experienced before at X Island. This is in his house in Richard Place when I think Dick was on his last days. And this is with his family on the many, many trips they took together with this wagon, and again with his family later on. Another characteristic I wanna mention about Dick is how critically honest and outspoken he was. He would always say what he thought. His money would never be in a bank that would buy firearms or that would invest in war. He was a man of intrinsic and firm principles in every single way. He would not fall even for a little. Everything was there. So he was very active during the Vietnam War at Cornell. So he had also humor, made the Bill of Rights, and Nuni, of course, sent this to me. And I don't know really the joke here because I don't understand every joke, but it's Calvin and Hobbes, and I'm sure you guys understand it. What does it say? Do you know the joke, Nuni?
I can kind of read it, but maybe somebody who's closer can read it.
It says, God put me on earth to accomplish a certain number of things. Right now, I am so far behind, I will never die. Well, I already told you about his theater, and this was a very famous moment in his life. He was asked to perform, and this was a secret, as Elias Fries, the father of mycology, at the International Congress in Vancouver. Probably, Mark, you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
And he came over, somebody said, now, was it in Vancouver the first time? Or was it
Vancouver, yes.
in Vancouver?
But in Oslo, they did it again, also with Pavel, yes.
That's true. So with Kumi made his all this outfit for him, and they were for a long time finding little bits and pieces and things. And since all that family knows how to do everything, they sewed everything, and then this was Dick as Elias Fries. He came out in that Congress and pretended he was Elias Fries, and he was speaking like Elias Fries with his Swedish accent. And it was such a magnificent presentation, and he did. So a story he told about collecting in Macaronesia illustrates his sense of drama and comedy. At a certain hotel where they stayed for several days, he and his 3 mycological colleagues came out of their lodgings early every morning and immediately with eagerness began to examine goat droppings on the lawn with hand lenses, looking for Ascomycetes. When they found one, they would exclaim joyously and collect the dung into small brown paper bags to dry as specimens for later examination. The next day and every day thereafter, while they were there, a crowd of local spectators appeared each morning on cue to stare at a bizarre ritual. He chuckled in the telling and said he never told anyone what they were doing. And when I went on my first collecting trip with him to Jamaica, when Ying Zhuang, him, and me, the 3 of us, we collected in the field, and he decided to buy a lot of bread and a pack of sardines. And when lunchtime came, we were in some mountains collecting, he would say, let's open the bread. I'm going to use my dung knife. And he would open. Of course, the knife was not pretty. He cleaned it with a little water, but he always liked to horrify people that were a little annoyed by that. So this is a happy moment of the family together in the Korf family. And Richard passed away on August 20, 2016, accompanied by his family and his dog, his granddaughter, his daughter, everybody that loved him. The love of his family for him was really amazing, and it still is. Here, the whole family is together with the dog, Mina, which is here on his lap. And I wanted to end up the talk with something he really liked. And he had printed next to the microscope. And it was a little poem about Nabokov, the writer and poet. And it's called On Discovering a Butterfly. And it says, smoothly a screw is turned. Out of the mist, two amber hooks symmetrically slope, or scales like battledores of amethyst across the charmed circle of the microscope. That was so poetic, so beautiful. I never knew it was there. I never knew what it meant until years later. But he had it there and had it, all of us appreciate that saying. That illustrates a bit of his personality. Well, I did not cry. I made it. And I have to thank many people for help in this presentation. It was a get-together of many thoughts, many people. It was really a collaboration of efforts. First, I want to thank Danny, of course, of having the idea to organize the Korf Foray to honor Dick. Madora Linares, a student at the herbarium, helped me with the presentation. People that collaborated, as you saw, were Hal Bertzel, Noni Korf, of course, a lot of her pictures, Tommy Victor, as another student that's here, working at the CUP herbarium, Bob Derrick, Kathy Hodge, a CUP director, and who steps in Korf shoes, Donald Feaster, Scott LaGreca, and many other people who I didn't mention here. I have some references, and this will be posted there. I took a lot of information from very good articles that had a lot of information on Dick. And well, with this, I thank you. I thought it would be nice if some people want to share some of their experiences and that they had with Dick and what Dick meant to them.
I will, real quick. I'm Scott LaGreca. I'm a lichenologist at Duke University, which is a few hours like that way or that way. I don't know. But I got my start at Cornell in the 80s when you were a graduate student, right? And I was an undergrad, but I took Introductory mycology and field mycology from Dick. And he sort of got me into lichens with a reverse psychology sort of trick, I think. He didn't know it, but we would bring him, some people would always bring lichens to him during field mycology, and he would just look at them and he would just go like that and say lichen, and then he'd like talk it. And I thought, well, I have to know more about these things. And it didn't, they were the only fungi that he wasn't interested in or didn't seem to know about. So kind of got me inspired to study them after that. Yeah.
Wow.
I think
That's nice.
he thought it was funny. I told him. He was like, oh, that's a good one, Scott.
Well, I don't know if anybody else has. Rue, did you?
Never met him. Sadly, I wish I had.
Okay, I don't know. Anybody else? Did you?
I met him once at a North American Mycological Association conference. Maggie Rogers was there. He had a copy, the first edition of the taxonomy, That Taxonomy Can Kill. And I walked up to him and said, I'd like to get one of those t-shirts. He said, well, they're for subscribers of mycotaxonomy. And which I was. And I said, oh, I subscribe. He goes, who are you? And I told him my name. He said, I don't know if he really recognized my name on the list, but he said, okay. So he sold me one, so I have a.
We probably, actually, we probably need your zip code.
I don't know what the code is.
We knew as a family,
Okay,
we would have to do when, you know, there was a quarterly publication, we'd have, you know, basically stuffing the envelopes. And so there for quite a while, like there was.
well, there are a few people in Arkansas that probably had Michael Jackson sent to them.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, he accepted me in my word, he says, okay, so he sold me a t-shirt, but that was the only time I really met him, but he was, I mean, you know, you can look at him and tell that he had a certain presence about him, and maybe I should phrase it that way. Yeah.
And Mark,
I would have thought you could bring this up, what we had in Costa Rica. They gave this fantastic talk.
can you
It's
say,
really- It's available on the internet, I guess. Now, when we had this discussion with the one fungus one, it was really a nuisance because I have been involved, of course, actively involved in the two camps, like Walter Cummins and Vogelmeier and I, and well, I mean, many people were also on our side, but somehow they, Oxford and the other colonists that started this, and they did not really think. And we have sorted out something with the more reasonable people like Scott Redhead, that we would actually, okay, we do it, but we try to find a way that involves less name changes. It would have been so easy just for the few cases where you need to prefer the older name like Aspergillus to do this and not to do this for the whole fungal kingdom. And we were so annoyed that in the end, Scott Redhead presented this in Melbourne, presented the case, and they wanted to make some drama. First, the most radical thing, just get rid of the Article 59 altogether. And there were only 3 mycologists, among them was Hawksworth and Walter Cummins and Scott. And the botanists, they were sick and tired of listening to the mycologists, and they just went for the first option. And this, actually, we got this. We had a symposium with a lot of good people from all over Latin America. Even Rafa was there. I remember this. We could get him from Cuba, and many other people. Also, some people coming in from the States, and I was also there. Priscilla was, of course, organizing it, and then Dick gave a very, very nice talk. And this was really amazing because I would never have thought he would still be so sharp and so. I mean, I had heard him before many times, but then in 2012 he was already over 90.
yes,
So this was really, I mean, you can really read, it must be somewhere at the internet, on the internet, you can really read this. And so it was, then in the end, I thought, if he would have been able to be instead of Costa Rica, now I would say if we had this video meeting, we could have put him to the botanists, and so he could tell them what's going on. But it was really too late. So this was also my last memory of it. I only met him I already saw him in Vancouver, but I didn't talk to him when I was just a fresh PhD student. But I was introduced to him by Jay Quadras, of course, in Oslo. And we met quite often over the years. And of course, I also published a little in Mycotaxon and stuff like that. So, no, but it was really great. That you must have prepared. It had taken a long time to prepare, and it was really very nice.
thank you. Thank you. I always feel that to talk about him will never be enough. There's so much to say about him. So, it's difficult to express in words what a special and unique human being he was. And his mycological imprint is going to be there forever. He is that Ascomycete guy, a cup fungi expert.
Yeah, but he also had a lot of knowledge about other fungi. It's not like that.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, he knew, for example, from the Ithaca area, he knew every fungus. Every fungus, yeah. Well, now we are in the Korf Foray, so we'll enjoy.